Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on AI era cyber risk. We just give a couple of minutes to folks to join the webinar, get started, and then we'll get into the details. Today, I have the extreme pleasure to have another guest with me, Larry Ponemon. You may have heard his name because of hundreds of studies he does. We were just talking earlier before the webinar on how many studies he has done in the past. So, Larry, welcome. Excited to have you.
Thank you so much. A real pleasure.
Larry, we'll wait for a couple of minutes before we get started.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, what's behind you? It's an interesting painting.
Well, it looks crazy, that's for sure. But it's a real painting. It's that's a fake background, and it grows on you after a while. You see all the circles and straight lines, and you feel like it's some kind of a crazy voodoo type painting. But
Was it done by AI or in person?
this was done in person. But we actually, I've been doing that actually, is trying to get AI to do drawings and real art. And thus far, it's okay. It's getting there. So, and we don't have to be artists anymore. We or call,
Don't say that.
no.
Don't say that. I think there's a wonderful place for both people and AI to coexist. I hope.
Absolutely.
Um, but welcome to folks from wherever you are coming from. I'm on the Pacific Coast, and Larry, tell us a little bit about where you're coming from. What time zone are you in? And
Oh,
we'll just get started in a minute or so now.
well, we're in the Midwest. We basically are a company, a research company, completely dedicated to research on cybersecurity, data protection, and privacy. We've been at this thing for 26 years. I can't believe it. I was a young man when we started this. It was great. Yes, and we've covered a lot. So, we have like a common theme. We really have interesting differences that we sometimes report. And
For
so we have
sure.
a laundry list of things that could go wrong when you're doing research. If you
Yeah,
have time, I can get your audience all upset.
for sure. So let's get started, Larry. First of all, again, welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar on AI era cyber risk. It's a research we have done with Ponemon. I'll tell you all about the background of the research. And the goal of this webinar here and the folks joining is to give you some key insights that we have gathered from security leaders that we have interviewed, that we have surveyed, and present these findings to you in the next 25 minutes. And if you're interested, if you like these report, it's already online. You can go to balbix.com and download a copy. The way we have seen a lot of folks use these reports is to make a business case to provide justification for new investments to their executive team, to their executive staff. And the reason why this is so powerful and so impactful is because we have the latest and the greatest findings. The survey, the research was done over the summer, and we put out this report in August. So it has the most current insights that we have been able to gather and put out. And give you a little bit of introduction. Myself, I am Umang Barman. I run the marketing team at Balbix. And you heard about Larry, but Larry, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. I can tell you the bad stuff first. No, I'm just joking.
That works.
Okay, attention now. But yeah, so we started Ponemon Institute, and I was a senior partner with Price Waterhouse before that, and before that I was a partner, not a senior partner at KPMG, and then before that I was a university professor, and then before that I worked for the government in the spy industry. You didn't hear me say that, by the way. I just made a mistake, but it was a long time ago, and
Wow.
yeah, and before that, I was in the Navy, U.S. Navy, not the Russian Navy, and did all sorts of things around encryption, missile, all sorts of really interesting stuff, top secret. But it was a long time ago, so I'm not really worried about that. And then before that, believe it or not, my first thing, after high school, I was a hippie. I played my hand as a professional guitarist because I thought I was decent as a guitarist, and I was fooling myself. I really didn't play guitar well, but I did encryption really well. So I said, let me just focus on encryption. So that's the Larry Ponemon story. I married
Awesome.
a beautiful woman, Susan. You know her, of course, because she is my partner in life, and we have dogs, and I have two boys and one grandchild, and that's one wonderful life. And
Yeah.
Michigan, I'm sorry, I said Midwest, but Michigan. Some people will consider Michigan the Midwest because it's
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and wonderful. I mean, thank you for your service and thanks for giving us this background. I mean, you obviously have very deep um, insights into research. You have done this, as you mentioned. This is 800 and something report that you have put out.
Mhm.
Uh, so tell me, how many chatbots did we interview for this report? I'm just joking. Tell me why this one is special, Larry. I know why this one is special for me, but tell me why this is special for you. And just give us a quick overview of who did we talk to?
Sure. So what we spoke to, we interviewed or we used a survey form, one of the above. We could do multiple methods. And we basically have 632 qualified respondents. If you know something about research, just when the subject is dealing in a confidential area, it's very hard getting 50 people. So to get 632 people is our secret sauce. We've been building our portfolio of smart people in the IT field, IT security field, and so on. And we hope to continue to build that. But that's our crown jewel. In this slide, also, we talk about number of geos. We do studies not just in the US, but globally. And again, we have had some really crazy stories, which I could tell you about if we have time. And then the number of industries in our survey, we basically allow people to check the box in terms of number of industries. And we use SIC code primarily as the code for
Yep.
industry category.
Yep.
And titles are very important too. CISO, CSO, CIO, but we also have people who are doing um, internal audit and financial accounting and
Yep.
also categories that you would say, what does that have to do with this? But it could be a very strong relationship that could make the study very interesting.
Yep. So I'll tell you why this is special for me, for the audience. By the way, one minor item I forgot as we got started is for the audience, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat window, and then we'll tackle them as we go. We obviously want to keep it interactive. I'll go through my insights, and then if you have questions, I'm happy to answer it along the way. The reason why this one is special for me is for three reasons. The first one is with the world changing and the attack surface changing,
Yeah.
there's a new vulnerability or threat that you hear about every day. What we wanted to do was take a step back and really understand what is it that security leaders in United States are most concerned about. What are their topmost concerns related to IT and security, and how do they articulate that? And we wanted to capture this and put it front and center. The second thing we wanted to understand is obviously ChatGPT was introduced in the winter of 2022. It's going to be 2 years, but for enterprise, for mainstream security, it's still a nascent and up and coming field and industry. And we wanted to understand, are people using AI to remediate risk? Are people using AI for cybersecurity? And if they are using it, in what ways are they using it? And the third and the final question was, we wanted to understand, given some of the regulatory changes in the US and around the world, how do non-cyber executives understand the cyber language, or do they not? And if they don't, why is that the case? And the reason why we want to understand is because security is becoming more and more a tier one citizen.
Mhm.
It's a board level issue. And because it's a board level issue, security deserves the same treatment that all other kinds of risk in organization have, which is governance risk, compliance risk, environment risk, financial risk, credit risk. and now it's security risk. And we wanted to understand, how can security become that tier one citizen? How can cyber executives articulate to non-cyber executive what are their top concerns, and why is it that they aren't able to do so? So that was our reasoning when we started off this report, and we asked, framed our questions along these lines. So today, for this webinar, we wanted to share just 5 insights with you. The report is packed with a lot more, so I would highly encourage you to go and download this report afterwards, so you can understand our reasoning and the recommendations that we provide from these insights. But today we wanted to highlight those 5 things that we think has fundamentally changed how we think about security. And that's what we wanted to present to you today.
Great.
So before we get started, I wanted to send a poll question to you guys based on one of the questions that we had in the survey. And I would appreciate if you guys respond, because that'll help me understand how you guys think about some of these things. And of course, we wanted to revert back and then tell you a little bit about the findings from the survey and what people thought was impactful to them and why was it impactful to them. So take a moment. So the question we're asking is, hey, what type of vulnerabilities are of greatest concern to your organization? And really what we are trying to understand here is, what in this audience, what do people say? And how does it reflect, how does the sentiment reflect to other 630 so people that we had interviewed and also responded to one of these questions? So take a moment and we'll get back to this answer. We'll tell you a little bit about what folks said in a second. Meanwhile, Larry,
Yes,
let's
sir.
talk about what we discovered, right? So we asked this question, what is the biggest security concerns? And specifically, the question was, what type of vulnerabilities are of greatest concern to your organization?
Yeah.
So tell us what you found, and tell us a little bit about, was it surprising to you?
Well, in some ways, it is surprising. So we basically are asking the question around the biggest or the largest security concern. And if you kind of look at the percentages, the highest percentage is 54%, and then it's 48%, then it's down to 43%. I'm a statistical nerd as well, and using a t-test or normal distribution, we're basically looking at statistically significant differences. So we think that's very interesting. EOL systems, vulnerability, all of these factors are very important. And it also noted here the remediation. And do you want to take this, Umang?
Yeah, yeah. So before I take that, let me tell you what the survey results were, Larry. So the concern among the audience, misconfigurations around the same 40% mark. There seems to be a slightly greater concern about user errors, which is not surprising. I think I came from an industry which tried to mitigate the user error. I was from the MFA industry. So user errors, user mistakes end up being the number 1, number 2 concern in most of these reports. Vulnerabilities in the user survey is a little bit low, and this is about 54%. So, my observation, by the way, what we did was we looked at these findings, and then we also looked at our data, which spans, hundreds of customers, to look at, is there a similarity between what people are saying here versus what people are saying or what people are concerned about in the environment? So vulnerabilities are definitely one of the concerns that spring up to the top. And the reason why vulnerabilities come up as the number 1 concern is because it's a super easy way for attackers to get initial access. Because if there are vulnerabilities in your environment that are known, it's likely the attackers know about all the open vulnerabilities too, and it's easy for them to check if one of the vulnerabilities that's already out there is in your environment and then use that to establish initial access. if there was any sort of risk, any sort of breach, it'll open up regulatory compliance concerns.
Mhm.
And the number of vulnerabilities, the concern related vulnerability isn't going away because there are new CVEs being introduced almost every day. In fact, 2024 is likely going to be the worst in terms of number of net new CVEs introduced. And we're expecting they're going to reach about 30,000 new CVEs. Last year, about 27,000. Was there any other color you wanted to add to this, Larry?
No, you did a great job. I really, when you explain it, and we had thousands and thousands of these things. It's really very scary. I think what people want to rationalize, and they basically, there's a whole theory around this in psychology, but the idea is that the scale of some of these data breaches, I suppose, is so large that we just don't think about it. We
Yeah,
we hide from it, and then
right.
it's really dangerous because you find out later, oh boy, I really
Yeah,
should pay more attention to this.
yeah. So one underlying point about why this happens to be the greatest concern is because often people don't find or don't have visibility into all the vulnerabilities.
Right.
And when they don't see, there's a fear of the unknown. And so our recommendation is to invest in a system and tool that would aggregate your CVEs in a single location. And when I say CVEs, I don't mean CVEs related to infrastructure. I mean CVEs related to infrastructure, your applications, your cloud services. And the one sort of this lurking thing which is growing is these misconfiguration. As more and more organizations adopt cloud-based services, the number of misconfigurations are going to go up. And so rather than just look at a point in time solution where you buy something that aggregates your CVEs, which in itself is a big win, we highly recommend to invest in systems and tools that would bring your CVEs and non-CVEs together. So now the fear of unknown is gone. You have full visibility, and you can use that visibility to then tackle which vulnerabilities you want to mitigate, which vulnerabilities you want to remediate. So that's our
Great.
first recommendation and first finding. The second one is we asked our respondents, how do you prioritize vulnerability? So however you get visibility, what systems do you use to prioritize? And Larry, tell us about what you found.
Well, I think we found some interesting results. At 100% scale, we basically have 51%. Basically, they're saying, I don't have my glasses, I apologize, but they use a vendor slash or selected vulnerability
Scoring.
scoring.
Yeah.
Then 45%, they use common vulnerability scoring system, CVSS. Or yes, yeah, I got that right.
Yep.
You get old, it's kind of hard to do this. The letters are really small.
Yep. Exactly. So you got that right. So the question really is, why do people use CVSS? And what we found was that it's because it was one of the earliest and the most established frameworks of prioritizing vulnerabilities. And
Mhm.
it's easy because it tells you how severe a vulnerability is. The thing that people may not know as much is that CVSS assumes a worst case scenario. So what we did was in another study, we looked at all the CVSS scores ever published for vulnerabilities.
Mhm.
And what we found was a large number of them, over 70% of them, skewed higher scores. And because CVSS assumes a worst case scenario, you always have more vulnerabilities with a worse scenario, meaning a score which is 8 or high. And
Mhm.
these scores don't change over time. So if a vulnerability is now introduced, most of these vulnerabilities won't be exploited, but the ones that do get exploited needs to have their scores change. But for CVSS, it doesn't. And it also lacks the organizational context. So if you have a vulnerability which is 6 layers deep into your tooling and your system, it's in a lab somewhere, you may never need to patch versus one that's exposed to the internet. And so the challenge is that because of the volume of number of vulnerabilities that are out there,
Mhm.
everyone wants to prioritize and fix it.
Yeah.
But the system you use to prioritize and fix and the system you choose is really important, because if you use CVSS alone, you may not get the results that you want. You may end up with a small win, meaning you will be able to reduce 20, 30% of the vulnerabilities, but that's still a lot of vulnerabilities. And if you look at the number of vulnerability instances, meaning how many times these vulnerabilities appear on an asset, it usually shoots up to 5 or 6 figures if you are a big enterprise organization.
Mhm.
So our recommendation is don't rely on CVSS anymore. Use a risk-based prioritization that incorporates other factors. Like severity is really important, but look at threat intelligence, exploitability, which means, is this sitting inside or is it exposed to the internet? Look at the impact. Does
Mhm.
it impact, what will the impact of the exploitation of this vulnerability to your business system? Does this asset host your PCI data?
Mhm.
Or does it just have your corporate directory? And then finally, are there security controls already enabled on the device, which means you don't have to patch it right away. The controls are likely to flag if the vulnerability were to get exploited, or likely prevent the vulnerability from being exploited in the first place. So what you want to do is look at all these factors that influences what vulnerabilities you prioritize. And if you invest in a good risk-based system, guess what? What we found, the number of critical vulnerabilities that you need to patch reduces by over 99%. And it's staggering because the wins that you get by just doing the risk-based is amazing. And given that you have to tackle so many vulnerabilities and you have to provide insights into what they are, this is a huge win for you. Of course, our next question was around executives and what they find engaging. We asked, hey, what percentage of executives in your organization find them uninteresting? And Larry, tell me what was this for you? Was it
Yes,
what
yes.
you expected? Were you surprised?
Yeah, absolutely. I was very, excuse me, I'm very surprised and disappointed because we've been doing a lot of research around metrics among senior level executives in IT or IT related fields. And basically, we get people who at least say verbally that they see this as important and it should be an item on the board meeting that they might have 4 times a year, 5 times a year. But the actual response here suggests that about half don't have a reason to present to the executives, senior executives, which means that it's not a priority, which means that they're going to get into a lot of trouble. We're seeing regulators like the SEC, not your conventional type of organization for
Yeah,
monitoring this, but it's a big problem. And a lot of people worry about lots of things, and this is one more thing. And they
yeah,
don't.
yep. And I think to build upon what you said, which is spot on, that the answer. So the first question people ask is, do I need to get my CFO, my CEO, my board on board to understand what these cybermetrics are? And the answer is absolutely yes, because those are the people that decide what budget you have, what resources you get, and they would ask you a question in case there was a breach. So how do you, if you're being held accountable to these, don't you don't you expect them to also understand these metrics? And the answer is absolutely yes, I want them to, but they don't. And the challenge that I found talking to people and the survey was that often these cybermetrics aren't easily translated to business impact.
Yeah,
Uh, the cyber executives, the cybersecurity teams talk in terms of MTD, mean time to remediate, mean time to detect, mean time to respond. They talk about a number of assets. They talk about shadow assets. They talk about IT assets. But there isn't a way to translate all of this into business impact. What is the cost of not doing it to my business? What is the cost of not doing this to my reputation? And because it lacks this financial context, it's really hard for people to understand why it matters to me.
hmm
And so our recommendation is that security teams invest a little bit of time in quantifying these cybermetrics and monetary terms for these non-technical executives, because it's the lifeblood that you need to make cyber stand out and get the tier one treatment, because now people will be able to understand the investment you're making in security. What is the return for it?
Mhm.
How does it reduces the cost? And we on the outside absolutely understand that. If there was a breach in a big Fortune 500 company, we know of many in the past 5 years, there is absolutely repercussions of it, meaning the legal cost, the reputational cost, the bad press, the cost to clean up, the cost to hire and retool your systems, the cost of backup. What does that mean? What is the cost? And if I invest a little bit in the cybersecurity tools, how will I be able to recuperate that cost? And so investing in tools that will help you quantify these risks, that is an impact, and then be able to show you an ROI is really important, and we highly recommend doing that. Um, Changing gears to AI-powered threats. First, the question we asked is, are there AI concerns or organizations in your organization? And then Larry, just kind of walk us through what happened here.
Okay, so we basically have an interesting set of findings, I believe. There's clustering a little bit here in some of the percentages, I think, but 47% of respondents in the study are concerned about vulnerabilities due to AI-generated code. 50%, exactly half percent, uh, uh, yeah, sorry, I'm needing like reading glasses again, don't conduct regular user training and awareness. And that's a pet peeve that I have. That's ridiculous because it's so easy to do a training program. There's no reason to basically, wait for it or try to get big bucks for it. It doesn't work that way. And 31% have tools to validate prompts and responses. So basically, um, if you kind of think about on a positive note, AI is evolving in interesting ways. I think a lot of folks, I went to Carnegie Mellon and there's quite a bit of research in this area. Um, but it seems to me that a lot of organizations are struggling with the idea. They know there's something really important, and they want to get it on the gravy train, whatever. But they may not be able to because they don't have the right tools
Yeah,
or the right climate for doing this kind of.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, one of the findings that we had in out of this study, and if you read any study out there that's done on AI, comes up with a very similar result, is that there are absolutely known risks associated with AI. So you have to really understand what kind of risks that AI is bubbling up today. And it's mostly related to Gen AI, right? Because it's easy to generate stuff, the deep fakes, the misinformation, the disinformation that you can get from writing, from creating pictures and videos. Sometimes you have to verify the authenticity of the thing that you're looking at, especially because social media enables you to generate and send this at a very high speed to people. It becomes easy for us to see what these uh, what these AI powered threats are. But it's important to recognize that they are not all the same.
Mhm.
AI isn't there to create vulnerabilities. AI isn't there to launch fully autonomous attacks. So the fear is a little bit overblown. What I think defenders have the capabilities to embed these AI in their tools, which is already happening. LLMs out there are capable enough that they can help you, they can work alongside you, they can crunch a lot of data very quickly to give you insights that you need to be more successful. And so what this insight, if you have to take away one thing from it, is let AI not be fearful for you. Use AI to then embed in your existing cyber tools and use this to your advantage, then be fearful of what it can do. And then the last insight, which was on AI for cyber, um, how are people using AI in your organization already? And the findings were, Larry?
I am trying to. I lost the. Well, let's see if I can try to get to your file. I apologize. I think I lost the connectivity.
Oh,
And
don't worry, I can cover it for you, Larry.
thank you.
So the three things that we found in these priorities were, one was around prioritization, right?
Yep.
The second was around inferencing of vulnerabilities, and the 50% folks said automation. So there were cases, a lot of people are already using AI to do certain tasks for them.
Mhm.
But here's the interesting thing. I think people are underestimating what AI can do for them. And a lot of folks think that AI is good for analytics, and that's totally fine because that's been the going theme in the market. I think the thing that people might be underestimating is the capabilities of Gen AI for good. And for good is the ability to do certain meaningful tasks that can give them 10x productivity gain. And when I say 10x, it means it works alongside people to do certain tasks that would otherwise take them a lot of time because they have to look at different dashboards, they have to collect the data, they have to analyze the data, they have to present the findings, they have to present in a report. And AI can easily, if embedded in the right ways, can pull the data, do the analysis, and give you the result and save you a ton of time. So AI by itself is not going to do anything good, but if it's embedded in your organization, if it's able to embed, or if it is able to see the data in your organization, then it can help you provide meaningful gains in cybersecurity. So our recommendation is, don't passively review your vendors. If you have a vendor, ask them if they offer a cybersecurity AI assistant. Many already do. And if they do, definitely take a look and see how it can help you today. So those are the top 5 findings. I know we are just about out of time, and I wanted to take just one minor second to tell you a little bit about Balbix. What Balbix does is, what we do is we provide you actionable recommendation to reduce cyber risk and exposure, meaning we're looking at your cybersecurity data from your infrastructure, your applications, your cloud systems. By cybersecurity data, I mean your vulnerabilities, your exposures, your CVEs. We consolidate it, put it in a single dashboard so you know where your risks are. And then we provide actionable recommendations to tell you exactly which ones is going to have the biggest impact to your organization. We also quantify that risk so you know in dollars what risk would impact your business the most. And then recently we have launched a cybersecurity AI assistant also. It's called Bix, and it can do some meaningful tasks for you. For example, if you want to know about a vulnerability and what its impact is going to be to your system, you simply ask a question and it'll tell you exactly when the vulnerability was announced, what was the impact, how many assets in your organizations are impacted, what is, if and any patch is available, and what you should do to patch. So it's very capable. So we highly recommend that for you to give it a shot. And then the last thing is, we have one question. Larry, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, my friend.
Really appreciate it. I hope lots of people use your services to run similar surveys. I think we found it super helpful. And then one question we have for everyone is, hey, let us know what you thought of this webinar. Would you recommend this to a colleague? Are there other topics that you want to hear about? We'd love to give you similar or more relevant topics for your organization. And if you like a demo of Balbix, of everything that you heard from us, we're happy to show you. And of course, there is a report that that we published too, that you can use to read more about these insights. And we really appreciate everyone joining us today. Thank you so much. And Larry, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks again.